Thank you for tuning into Trevor Talks podcast, where we talk to real people about real topics and real stories. Today's guest is somewhat of a multi-talented individual. Not only is he a bearded wonder, but he is one of the biggest names in Christian music. His brand new album, Milk and Honey, just released and is currently living on the top of my Apple Music playlist. And we're just excited to have him today. Today, we've got Mr. David Crowder on the show. David, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, man. This is awesome. It's good to see you again, too.
Dude,
we have history.
Yeah, we've got quite a bit of history, getting locked up on airplanes for about 4 hours, almost missing festivals.
I forgot about that one. That was kind of intense there, wasn't it?
It was pretty intense, but at the end of the night after your set, I was running out on stage to kind of hype everybody up, and we kind of had that eye lock moment. It's like, we made it.
We made it.
They
have no idea. Yeah.
No, we kind of missed out on we got the short end of the stick because the rest of the band got on their own little private plane to get there. So we ended up staying on Delta, but it was good to go. But you just had a new record come out.
We did, man. And we barely, well, that's so crazy. It's always a sprint. We had when we locked down, it's probably a year and a half from the moment I was told to go home off the road. And that's plenty of time to come up with a record. And so it's like, and every time I'm doing an album, it's at the very end. You're like, why am I like not sleeping this last week? And this should not be this hard. This work should not be this hard. And sure enough, the same deal, man. It's like sprint to the end, but we got it out just in time, and super happy to have it out in the world finally.
Well, it just debuted at number 1 on the Christian charts in the U.S. Billboard. That's crazy.
Great. That's great, huh?
It's pretty great. I'm sure the record label is happy. I bet you look happy. You may play it off.
Smiling. Yeah, I'm smiling. I love the songs, man. I'm so excited about the songs, and but the same deal, man. Music's best when it's happening in the air with people in the room. So I'm ready to get back out and make noise in front of folks. It's way more fun that way.
Yeah, and this album, just like the other 3, has its own kind of unique sound, and I really want to dive into that. This has more of the ambient choir with some folktronic in there, Yeah. It almost feels like it's hip-hop inspired. Is that true?
Yeah, I kind of started down that road a little bit on I Know a Ghost. Well, not a little bit, a lot of bit. The last record before this one, I made it in a totally different way. I just had a bunch of people send me beats as if I were a hip hop artist, which I am not. But man, it was so freeing to write a different way. And so coming into this album, I was hoping to take what I had learned with that experience and then sort of do a blend of the two, know what foundational elements may or may not be there in a track, and have the freedom to start with track if I wanted to. But at the same time, write in a more traditional way with the track creation being a part of the writing process. And so it feels like a much more cohesive sound than I've gotten to thus far in the solo endeavor. I'm always trying to grow as a techie nerd. I love studio gear and
obviously
kind of a gearhead, and I love poking around at stuff, but it's so difficult to take what is interesting to me in a moment and make it function in a way that supports something that a lot of people can connect to. Like I might be geeking out over a particular sound and be lost in it for a day or two, and nobody even cares. It's like the first hi-hat would have been just fine, Crowder. So I think there's a part of the songwriting process and the creation of the music process that is a letting go, and I think that's part of what I'm getting a little bit better at.
And you
OCD's a terrible thing,
man. I can't say I can relate with that, but I totally get it, dude. But
okay.
You say you're not a rapper, but
yeah, I do. There have been occasions I've tried to. I call it talking in time, talking fast in time out loud. And so I have done that on a couple of occasions, but it doesn't, I don't fancy myself as a rapper. No, you throw a beat and a microphone and say, go, it's not going to be a good rap.
You whip out a banjo. You whip out a banjo.
There's a different deal. Yeah. Different thing.
Yeah, but you have Holvey on this latest record, and that song actually surprised me because I didn't look at the track listing before I started listening to it. The day it came out, I was like, I got to hear this, man. We
it's
had
a little rowdy.
Yeah, it's a little rowdy, but it's on brand for you. You set out on this Crowder endeavor from the David Crowder band to do something more personal for yourself, but it's really amplifying the voice of the church. All of your songs are really, 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 really just unique in their own way. You can play them on the front porch. You can play them on Sunday service. Like, let's go. What's the whole process behind that? What did the writing process look like going into Crowder, like Neon Steeple, and how has it progressed as you've gone on?
Yeah. I just knew that I liked making music for the church. After the other endeavor came, after David Crowder Asterisk Band came to an end, I didn't know if it was music I didn't know if that was what I still need to be doing. And initially I started, since I love music, I just found myself around the, house writing country songs, and they were just pretty easy I enjoyed it. It was just pretty fun. And I hadn't ever really written anything outside of church music, and these things were just kind of coming. And I was like, this is interesting. Maybe I could do this kind of thing for a bit and be a writer or something. And there wasn't a satisfaction in it. It was like fun, but it felt like, it just felt fun. And there wasn't like a purpose that felt like I'm playing my role, and the way I'm put together, I'm aiding the endeavors of the community of faith I'm in. And so I just realized there's a deeper level of satisfaction that I get, particularly when I feel like I'm serving a function for the church. And specifically, I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and I was part of Passion City Church there. And I just found myself like, it's like, who's going to bring the casserole dish on Wednesday? It's like, I feel like I'm supposed to bring how I'm put together to aid our endeavors as a community. And I'm musically inclined, and I want to help in that way. And so I then knew, okay, I'm not done with this, because it still feels like there are things I can say uniquely for our group of people. And I have the people around me that are still encourage me to do it. My pastor and his wife have been super a part of my life since I started making music, and they're like, we think we're with you if you feel like you're still supposed to be doing this. We're with you, and so we geared up again and went at it, and it was really much more of a total restart than I thought it would be. It was probably a couple of year lag between the end of the David Crowder Band and this solo thing. And I just figured, well, my name was in the first one, so surely people would be interested in what I'd do next. No, it wasn't like that. It was like starting all over, which was really kind of fun and freeing. And it's been a building process of finding what sounds I was interested in at the time. As far as musicians go, the door was wide open, where in the past we were very insular, and it was just, us we were basically the church band in Waco, Texas at our church. And it was us that were in the studio together making the music. So, as a collective of the six of us. And then now it was like, okay, well, who do you want to play guitar on this? I'm like, oh my gosh, never thought about that before. 'Cause we always just had, Jack or Sally or Mark or somebody sitting around and was playing guitar. And so that became really enjoyable, in the sense of I've had a lot of friends that are musicians that I've admired for years, and I'd give them a holler and be like, hey, could you come over and play a bit on my record? And so it was really fun to have music be a way that I used to say it was incredible to have music coming out of relationship, which was what was happening in the previous entity. And then here I've formed a lot of really incredibly deep relationships through music, and it's been beautiful. So I've gotten to have now the fourth record with a lot of different people that I think are just absolutely brilliant at what they do. And I feel like, in a sense, it's hopefully rubbed off on me a little bit, and I've grown from where I was when we started this thing. That's always the hope, is that we're growing and headed somewhere.
Yeah. And one of those deep relationships you hinted on, little bit earlier, a lot of people don't know that Louis and Shelly Giglio actually were one of those key people in your life back in '96 when it was
Yeah,
time to start creating a record.
totally.
They kind of took you under their wing and invested a lot into that.
When and there with no I moved to Waco to go to school about the time they were leaving Waco. They had been Shelly went to Baylor, and Baylor's what took me to Waco, Texas, to go to school there. But Shelly had been to Baylor. Louis had started a weekly Bible study called Choice that it was packed. It was like 1,500 college kids every week, and it was amazing. But his dad was ailing in health, and so he felt like he was supposed to go back to Atlanta, Georgia, where he had grown up, and take care of his dad in his final days. And so he packed up everything and shut the Choice thing down, and was headed home. And then his dad died before he got like there, and was like, oh my gosh. So like, why would I feel like God moving me to back home? And I shut everything we'd invested, 10 years of our lives in Waco, Texas. And now why would he want me to go back home to Atlanta, Georgia? And out of that moment of what in the world, where are you leading us? Passion conferences came, that vision for collegiate students on a more national scale to get together. It was pretty, it's just crazy to me how, when you look backwards, to see how God was active. So he's kind of headed down that road. He's no longer in Waco, and our paths crossed through song again. He gave me a call. I was on staff at that church, or on staff at the church in Waco that was mostly college kids. But I was in the office one day, which I was rarely in the office. I have no idea why I was in the office. I was the worst employee ever. But I'm in the office, and the phone rings, and they say, "Hey, somebody's on the phone for you, Crowder," and it's Louis Giglio. He says, "Hey, man, my name's Louis," and I'm like, very familiar with you. He goes, "Well, I'm starting this deal, this college conference deal. We're going to do it down in Austin. It's our second time to go for it, and we've recorded a live CD and want to use some of your songs on this live CD." And I'm like, "How in the world did you hear any of my songs?" We're just this little church in Waco, and somehow the songs had leaked out a bit, and he's like, "Well, we have, and we'd love to have it." And I'm like, "That sounds awesome." So we started a friendship then, and then over the years that developed into like now I'm going to his church in Atlanta, Georgia, and his wife Shelly is my manager, and they started a Six Steps label, and it all came out of them trying to foster and steward folks like Matt Redman and Chris Tomlin and these guys that were writing songs for the church to sing, and they wanted to give them space to do what they felt like God was calling them to do, without getting sucked into the machine of whatever, label music, commercialism, all that stuff. It's just like, hey, let Chris Tomlin be Chris Tomlin, and let's find a space and a way for him to create, and as well a platform for his music to get to the world. And that's still kind of what they're up to today, as well as leading the church community in Atlanta.
That sounds like a busy schedule, and I think it's really cool that your relationship with them has lasted so long, especially when it comes to music. I know when you find people that you want to work with, it's something that you want to keep and steward and last as a friendship, but also a business partnership. But I think it would be an injustice to listeners not to dive a little bit deeper into your story. Before '96, before the David Crowder Asterix band kind of took off, you were at Baylor. But before then, what was it like being David Crowder growing up? You obviously didn't have the beard your whole life, which now it kind of seems like it.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. What happened before that beard started popping out, man?
Man, I had my parents were awesome. We had a great child. I have a brother that's 5 years younger than me, and we were really great pals. We lived kind of out in the country, wound up with a bit of land that had, horses and cows, and, our chores started really early in the morning it was crazy, chickens and that whole deal, go get the eggs. It was legit. It was a lot of work. And at one point I had a number of horses that I sold. And when I got into high school, I sold my horses, and got us a family ski boat. So I was no longer a cowboy, and instead we were lake rats. And then so most of our weekends early on were spent at some sort of livestock get together. And then by the time I was in high school, I was always out at the lake, but very much outdoors all the time. And my parents were pretty. They instilled in us a good work ethic is what I would say. I think they had us for a while. Me and my brother would joke. I think that they just figured they needed hands around the properties. They just needed some hands to help out. And so we figured that. I figured I'd bust up the system by getting a boat, and it would cut down on the workload. Oh man! So it was a great childhood. My parents are super devout in their faith, and my friends would come over to spend the night with me, and they were super excited and kind of freaked out that we ate every meal together. And at the end of the meal, at the end of the dinner, my dad would pull out one of these books, his Bible story books. They were these blue books, and a series of them. And he would read a Bible story, and then we would pray, and then it was on to whatever frivolity that we were going to get into for the rest of the evening. But that was every night the same thing. My mom we didn't have much money, so my mom we had the same meals every week. We had like Tuesday nights meatloaf. I hate meatloaf. I mean, my mom can't make meatloaf. It's a terrible thing. But it was every Tuesday, and every Wednesday is spaghetti night. It's not spaghetti. I wound up getting to spend the night with a friend one time and early on, and I'm like, "What's this?" And he just, "That's spaghetti." I'm like, "That's not spaghetti. We have spaghetti every Wednesday." He goes, "This is totally spaghetti." I'm like, "This is really good. This is not what we eat on Wednesdays."
What did she do? Take the meatloaf and grind it up?
We think that might be part of it. It was sort of these noodles floating in like a pink liquid. It was bad. Oh, it's just really bad. It was not good. But government cheese. That was a big deal. You try to make a sandwich out of the cheese, and you cut through it, and it just kind of burst into like a cloud powder. And you had to kind of collect the cloud powder, put it on the bread if you want to make a grilled cheese or something. Yeah, fake mashed potatoes. It was intense, man. When milk would go, this is another thing that freaked my friends out. It's like when milk would go on sale, my dad would buy all of it. And I'm like, "It's on sale because it's like expired, bro." And then, "What are you saving, like a nickel?" And then he would freeze it. We'd have like milk, just gallons of milk in the deep freeze because it was a good price. And then you'd have to let it thaw in the fridge. And let me tell you, it thaws at different, whatever milk's made of, it thaws at different consistencies where there were layers to it. You had to shake it every time you go.
Did it last long? After you freeze it, does it restart the clock? What does that look like?
It restarted it to whatever the date was that he bought it at, but you don't know because it's like that's date's gone. So it was always a guessing game when you went to get a bowl of breakfast. It was tough. It was hard out there, man. That's what I'm saying. Maybe that's why I have a beard.
You're like, gotta have something to catch out rotten milk.
Yeah.
Now, what did your dad do for a living?
He was an insurance agent. He owned his own insurance agency, and everybody loves their insurance agent. Nobody likes their insurance agent. No, people loved him, man. He was. I thought he was the coolest guy on the planet, and that's what I wanted to do. I would go up to his office after school and just watching, early on watching work, and eventually I was giving car quotes at like age 11. They're like,
that's very similar to me. My dad owned an appliance store. I learned how to sell, and I never stopped. Let's go.
There you go. That's it, man. It was contagious. I mean, he had the office with the wood paneling, and this is the 80s or whatever, and wood paneling, had the wallpaper with the forest scene behind him. He looks like he's just working from in the forest. Had that foam with the shoulder holster holder on it, and I just
too bad they didn't have Zoom back then, man.
Yeah, we could be seeing him right now.
Yeah, right now. That's wild. I can't imagine you working in an insurance office. I'm gonna be honest with you.
I could get it done. I could have got it done. Music was just something that neither my mom nor my dad were musically inclined. My mom's family was, and she played like clarinet when she was growing up, but in her words and her family's words, badly or
Mm,
poorly. Um, and yet their family would, every time they would get together, they would all bring their instruments, and Uncle Lester had composed the piece and had written everybody's parts out, and they would get together, the family band, and my mom, I guess, would squeak out some stuff on the clarinet. But it was very amazing, I think, to have like a group of people that you call your own get together every year and play music as part of their bonding. Is pretty
yeah.
great. So it's in there somewhere, but I just it wasn't anything that anybody would have thought like, hey, when you grow up, David, we really hope that you pursue music. First of all, I don't think any parent ever tells their kids this, because just
No.
to have it pay any bills is probably as fortunate as winning the lottery or something. But somehow we wound up getting the skill set together, and I kept telling my dad early on, I was like, man, I'm still coming. It's when they'll stop calling, I'll be there, and eventually I said, I don't think they're going to stop. I think we're going to have to move on. So he sold the place, and I don't have anything to fall back on now. So I got to make this.
Yeah. This is your no plan B. And
Yeah.
how old were you when you first picked up an instrument and started playing it? Because you play the
Well,
guitar, the banjo, the piano, and you do it all very well, by the way.
I'll poke at anything around, and well, so to answer the question, my mom had inherited. I don't know whose piano it was that she had inherited, but we had a piano in the house. But it was one of those deals like, don't touch it. When you're a kid, it's like, don't touch that. But you're also, it's like the thing you're told not to touch, and it also makes noise, and so you're going to touch it. It's like just a given.
Yeah.
Don't tell David not to touch it, and so I started banging around on it and getting in trouble. And then eventually my mom was like, I think I recognize that tune. And so she was at least aware enough to notice that I had an ear. And so got me some lessons, and I hated them. But she made me go, and I guess that's where things started for me. And then by the time I was in college, I loved music, and but again, not for a career set. But I was getting a BA, which is like a cheap music degree, and my emphasis was in music, and I got to study everything else as long as I could pass an entrance exam. I was like, this is great, and I was studying for that while going to school, and then the church started, and I, like I said, being somewhat musically inclined, the guy that was starting it was like, hey man, can you help me out? And I was like, that's a bad idea. And here we are. Pastors, I say it all the time, pastors are the most manipulative people on the planet.
I,
They get to
that
do anything practically.
if they can lead people to Christ, and I'm not saying they're selling the gospel or anything, but you got to be somewhat of a salesman to just encourage people to, you got the Jehovah's Witnesses, like no shade on them. They come to your door. There's some salesmen. They're like, can I tell you about the Lord Jesus Christ? And it's like, no. So for someone to actually be able to sit there, and especially as talented as yourself and Louis Giglio, to keep people coming, that's a talent. That is a long, long talent. And you've also had such a long track record with music and everything. And obviously starting young, it is like winning the lottery to be able to do this. And at the scale that God's given you the ability to do it at, the pandemic hit while you were on Winter Jam.
Totally.
And I'm curious, what did that last week look like? Were you seeing a fluctuation in crowd sizes? Were the Christian?
Oh no, man! It was blowing up. We were having the best time ever, and we were in Louisville, Kentucky, and it was really early on. Nobody knew what was going on. We knew that weekend that we were out, we were headed to Ohio, and Ohio was one of the first states that kind of shut things down. So we knew, all right, we might not make it to Columbus, but we're in Kentucky. Surely we'll be fine in Kentucky. But no, I mean, we had, like I said, sound check had already happened, and we got word that afternoon, hey, pack it up, we're going home. This weekend's busted. And as I said, with not knowing what was coming, everybody thought, well, maybe next weekend. So we'll play it by ear, see what next weekend holds, and then it's like, well, maybe the next week. Then it's like, hey, flatten the curve, shut down 14 days. No, a year and a half later, we're still trying to figure it out. So we didn't, it was a surprise for everybody for sure. And I hate to say, speaking of winning the lottery and getting to do what you love to do, it's really amazing that I get to do this. It truly is. To not only that I love music, but that I get to find that fulfillment of knowing I'm put together in a particular way, and I'm using the way that I'm put together in a particular way to aid in the story of the gospel being understood and appreciated and shaping how we think about one another as well as God, all through music. It's really amazing. I don't want to use the word or words that I took it for granted, but I think all of us had no clue that could just be shut down overnight. And so I know that there's a great sense of gratitude and excitement when we get back together. It does feel really special. It feels like something pretty profound and sacred. And I hope that feeling stays as it has to in a vague sense, in the least, just because, all of this could be gone overnight. Mm-hmm. And that the church can gather is a pretty special thing.
Mm. And you've already gotten to go back out and do a little bit of touring. You did the Winter Jam weekends. How was it? How was the energy just getting back out after being cooped up? For someone like you that's touring all of the time, I can imagine being off for a year and a half. You were just a loose cannon. How did that feel?
Well, it was kind of nice to slow down for a second. It really was. Now that we're on the other side of it, and we could say, thank God we are. Looking backwards, it was really amazing to be able to slow the pace a bit, and we were making an album, but at the same time there was a sacredness in the solitude, I guess is how I would say it. But my goodness, it's not just me. Everybody in the room when we got back out, like everybody's wound up and glad to be back out of the house. I promise that, and especially when you're, as I said, getting to sing together as a church. It was tough on churches, had to adapt, and a lot of things moved online, and man, as soon as you're able to get back together and it feels like the family of God, that's what we're made for, I believe. And so it's a much better thing to be in a room with another person than to be on the other side of a Zoom call, right?
Oh, for sure. I wish we could have done this in person. That studio is phenomenal. Now, did you learn any interior design while you were out?
No. That's my wife's. It's in her territory, which she's amazing at it. But I did get to. She tries to make me feel involved with things, and I'm on to her now. But it'd be like, which she'll put out some color swabs or something, and it'll be like, which one do you think? And I like that red. She's like, that's not the right one. And I'm like, okay, what about the brown one? That's the right one. I'm like, okay,
throw some neon in there.
I'm not even a part of the deal, but she's making me feel like I am. It's like, that's the wrong answer. Okay, tell me what the right one is. It's this one. Okay, let's go with that one. Okay.
Does she help out with any of the live set designs or anything like that?
She has an influence in all the stuff I'm doing. Anything that looks cool, it's probably her fault.
So she designed the front porch, really?
No, she hadn't. She will tell you she had nothing to do with that. She says that's all on me. Yeah, that thing was a beast. That was trouble. No one that's around me and that works with me appreciated the porch because it was really difficult to haul around, and it caused lots. Tin can cut really quickly with a tin roof, in the back of the trailer. You got to be very careful. It caused much injury, and it's not on the road anymore for lots of reasons.
Well, it definitely had its season. And Kenny Rogers, she's still doing all right, I'm assuming. Is she in a road case or is she at the house?
She's actually in a road case. She lives in the road case, and that's great. You can't do that with a lot of pets. It's bad.
Yeah, it's like I ain't got to feed her.
Just so everybody knows, it's a taxidermied Arctic fox named Kenny Rogers that we take with us we like to say that we go where she goes. She's our fearless leader, and she's the cheapest of all of us in catering. Her catering bill is pretty minimal, and she's well behaved and does everything I tell her to do. It's pretty great.
Man, that's something there. Kenny, she's a beautiful one.
Yeah, the more people ask about it, the more questions you have about her, the more confusing it gets. So, the basic explanation is when we had the front porch, a friend of mine, I'd come up with a front porch thing that, lasers shoot out of the windows of, and it looks like you walked a Cracker Barrel or something. And my friend's like, man, you can't have a proper porch without a proper dog. And I'm like, aha, I have just the thing. And so Kenny came out with us and became sort of a mascot of sorts. It legitimizes what we're doing when we say we're making porch music. She makes it, and the reason it's a girl dog is named ahead of time. It's white. It's Arctic Fox, and so of course, I think my brother. I don't remember who named it, but somebody started calling it Kenny Rogers, and then my brother's one I think pointed out, said that's obviously a girl dog, and then for obvious reasons, and it was too late, so it stuck with Kenny.
Man, that's phenomenal. And so you've gone from Neon Steeple to American Prodigal to I Know a Ghost to now Milk and Honey. What's next for David Crowder?
Man, like you said earlier, I cannot wait to get out and tour these things. I can't wait to be singing these songs with, sitting in the basement here, thinking of groups of people singing together. And I can't wait to actually get to go do that. And like I said earlier, we've had a couple of moments, but when we get to be out on tour again and do it night after night, it's going to be an absolute miracle. I see it on the calendar, but I don't believe it till we're there.
You just announced a tour with
Sean Curran. Yeah, Sean Curran, which is he's another of the PCC church rats around here, and I love him, of what he's been doing, and so I can't wait. We're gonna have a great time. He's a great dude.
Man, that's sick. I'm gonna have to come out and catch that one. And where can people find you on social media?
Look up Crowder.
Look up Crowder.
I'm sure. Yeah, you had to do a Google search and just enter Crowder, and it'll probably be. I don't know if it's Crowder. I don't know where it is. Crowder Music or just
Crowder Music, but they could type it in the search engine too.
Sometimes it's Crowder. I think on Instagram it's Crowder's, and then I think somewhere else it's Crowder Music. I don't know, man.
That pretty much sums it up. I'll put the link in the description for that, but everybody can find Milk and Honey on all streaming platforms, and I'd highly encourage you to go to crowdermusic.com and purchase that thing, because that just helps keep the boat going a little bit further. But David, man, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do this. It's
absolutely good to see you again, and great to chat, catch up a little bit. It's awesome.
Yeah, hopefully we run into each other on the live circuit eventually, but
that would be wonderful. And hopefully it's not like in circumstances where we're blazing to get somewhere.
Yeah, stuck on a plane for 3 hours?
Yeah,
and we had to be at the airport at 4:30. That's one thing we failed to say. But man, it's been a pleasure to have you on, and thank you to all the listeners for tuning in yet again. It's pretty phenomenal to get to speak with people I grew up listening to, and I know everyone else loves you. You're one of our top requested guests that we've had. But yeah, thank you all for listening, and thank you to New Release Today for making this interview happen yet again on the New Release Today podcast network, and we will talk to you guys next week.